the session is called Knowledge Extraction, is anything that is happening between now and lunch. So take your time. We start with Joris van Zundert. So the topic is knowledge extraction, and we have 4 presentations, 5 really, not 4. Now we start with Joris van Zundert. Sorry for butchering your name.
No, that's completely fine. So thank you for being here. Come in. Let's see how I'll start this. Well, I have 127 slides actually, so I'm not worried about filling the time, of course. But yesterday we were talking a lot of things, and it seemed that my presentation goes in the direction of we can actually do shit. All the things that I tried so far didn't work. And that is actually quite interesting. That was what keeps me busy in my job. So that's why this is called Hardships in Narratological Modeling and Literary Language Processing. What I want to do, I'm a literary scholar by academic training. I'm a software engineer by professional training. What I want to do, what I'm very interested in, is in narratological concepts. So these are pace, time, setting, characters, plot development, and all that in a literary novel. And well, once they told me we can do this, and after 20 years in the field, I'm not so sure we actually can, but we have good inroads, and I want to show you a few today. That didn't work. Why didn't that work? No, but
No, don't.
okay. I know computers. Click on. So first of all, one thing you as a literary researcher probably want to know or want to be able to is to kind of mine the characters from novels text. So I've been working on this with Andreas van Kranenburg, who's at the Groningen University, and Roel Smeets, who's at Nijmegen University. And we typically thought, like, how hard can this be? Just to tell you a little bit, sort of the mainstream, middle of the road research you will see in this, that people tend to annotate characters in novels and then they create a social network of those characters, which is fine work, of course, but we want to have more knowledge about these characters. So for example, we want to know what their traits are. Are they mean or are they lovable? Do they talk a lot, etc., etc.? And that's what you typically do not get from these annotated graphs. So we are really into, can we kind of make mining tools that can do that? The big problem in this case is that there's a thing that's called co-reference. I don't know if you all know about that, but typically characters in novels are not, well, they are mentioned by their name, but they are often much more often mentioned by description, like the guy in the corner or the girl with the striped blouse, or you name it. And it's these things. If you just do the kind of low-hanging fruit of named entity recognition, you will not get those references, and that's exactly what authors use to describe the characters that are doing stuff in there. Don't press the right mouse button. You know that doesn't work.
Now you should be able to use the arrows and the keyboard.
Okay. So we work together to see character detection as a computational task. The basis of that is named entity recognition and a thing that is called co-reference resolution. So actually trying to find those co-references, and then you have the hard job of figuring out which named entity goes with which co-reference. Oh yeah, and that's interesting. There is actually, of course, tools out there for the English language. It's always English, right? Like Book NLP, and that reports a success rate of F1 of 79%, which would be great if that were true. It's not true, by the way. Why is it not true? can you say nasty things about colleagues in America? They simply they skip a lot of those co-references. Yeah, and if you don't count them, yeah, you get a high at 1. So what Andreas did, I didn't compute that. What Andreas did is kind of taking part of those computations that the Stanford people did, applied it to the Dutch context, and we get actually a very satisfying rate of the identification of mentions in the text. So people that are referred to in the text. That's all fine, and we can check this because Gould's made it kind of a silver standard, which is what we call the annotated text of 170 novels, where students have worked very hard to annotate all the names in the text. But you hear it again, names, not the co-references. Therefore, silver standard. We need an actual better standard for that. Anyway, if we run this process, we get a co-reference identification rate of 90% strict and 97% lenient. That depends on whether we have some examples over there. So if you get the name exactly right, we call that a strict reference. If you also get a description and the algorithm picks up on that, you get a lenient sort of identification. So it's a little bit fuzzy when we call something exactly found and not exactly found, but you see that we can do that quite nicely. The big problem, it only works if you go for like 2 paragraphs, a page, maybe half a chapter. But if you take a longer text, and let's face it, novels are long text, it's a long read. What the algorithm starts doing when it's trying to identify which co-reference goes with what character name, at some point, eventually it will make an error and it will connect one co-reference to the wrong character, and bam, those 2 characters are now one and the same. Which means that at the end of the novel, the computer decides there's only one character with an awful lot of co-references in that novel. And that is a problem that we're still battling. We're still facing that, and we haven't solved it. Nevertheless, what you can do with these kind of nice but still mediocre results is you can actually identify sort of what authors are trying to do. For example, what's very interesting for us is how is the gender balance in novels? What you're seeing here is a distribution of how pronouns are divided across these novels. And the midpoint, 0.0 is here, okay? If you're on this side, as a text or an author, you're leaning towards talking a lot about female, or at least you're using a lot of female pronouns. If you're on this side, you're talking about male pronouns. Now you see that, so at least the Dutch literary landscape is kind of malish. It's a man-made world, which is by the way, a result that we get anytime you do any gender analysis in any sample of Dutch literature. It's really a world about men. Now, I won't explain in detail what this is. It's a sliding window through one of the texts, Martin's Double Road, doubly read. And it tries to give you a picture how gender balance is divided across the novel. This one is particularly interesting because of this. Well, there's a lot of these kinds of quotes in that novel. But if you do the computation, it will tell you this is kind of a male-ish part in a novel, but it absolutely isn't. If you look at this text, and therefore this is a very interesting quotation, I think, it is actually about the female protagonist of the novel. It's just that it's his observations that he's talking about. So he's talking a lot about or the author is describing that he's thinking a lot about what he is doing, what the effect is on her. But if you know that this is a female protagonist that eventually dies because she doesn't want to eat anything, it gives a completely different context to what is said here. And that is something that we are absolutely unable, as of yet, to take into account when we're trying to analyze these texts from a computational perspective. Of course, that's the horizon of what we want to do. So these are just intermediate steps to get there. So, second example, this is a very interesting novel, I think. So did about 270,000 Dutch people who at least bought the novel. Maybe they also read it. Now, 270,000, I don't know what the sales numbers in Italy are. The 270,000 in the Netherlands is whooping. That's really an awful lot. You know, the average literary author in the Netherlands would hope he once wrote a book that would sell that number. So, by definition, I think that's interesting to look at. You know, we can discuss whether Dan Brown is really a good author, but we cannot deny that people eat his novels, and therefore, we as literary scholars should look into that. Did anybody? No. There's exactly one student I know of in Leiden. She promised to look into it, but I never heard of her again. So I'm not sure what she's doing at the moment. I really hope she's still working on that. In any case, I think there's a reason why people don't look into it, because the audience, so the readers in the Netherlands love it, but the critics, the so-called professional readers, people that need to, make us understand how literature is supposed to work, they really hate it. I mean, I've never read a newspaper review of a novel in which the reviewer says that an editor at a publisher really should have halted the publishing of this novel. I mean, that's so devastating. I mean, I wouldn't even be able to write that down. That critic did. This is a graph of the sales of the position in the sales list week by week. We have never had a novel in the Netherlands that featured in the top 30 for that long. It's 2.5 years. It's just amazing. She also got one of the major public awards in the Netherlands. So this is, we cannot deny that this is just what people want to read. This is important. Now, the interesting thing is, Lala Gül wrote what they call it, autofiction, is it called? So it's not an autobiography, but it's very autobiographical, but she turned her life into fiction. And what she did is, she's from a Muslim background, and she kind of escaped that background because she was a child of Orthodox Muslim parents, and she didn't like that. So it's a novel about the struggle to get away from there. And what she does, she uses the language of people that are younger than, let's say, 25. So there's a lot of street language in there. There's a lot of interesting words that older people even don't know what they mean. And one interesting thing that stood out to us, to Julia Newgarten, who's working with me on this, one thing that stood out to us, when she gets really angry, when she gets really pissed off about something, then her language becomes it takes a higher register. So she uses complex terms and complex constructions. Whereas if she's kind of happy or mellow, she will talk very plainly. So that's just an interesting feature, the style that she plays with. The professional critics called it archaic and a nuisance use of old words. Okay. So we wanted to try to measure that. And I think there's a form of complexity. So that's a zip-based. How can you compress a text? And if the text is simpler, it will compress better. Versus the anger. anger words according to the Luke scale, if you can say that. So we found that a nice results. Our peer reviewers didn't. So we got that back with, why don't you try a BERT approach, a large language model approach? So we gave a lot of paragraphs to BERT, telling BERT that, okay, these are examples of angry language. Now go look at the rest of the paragraphs. We call that model Angry Bird. You can download it if you want to. Oh, sorry. But it gave us a similar sort of, yeah, there's a trend, but it's not a very hard trend. So it's all still very undecided. This one, I think, does decide that there is indeed a relation between the use of complex style and the level of angriness. As long as we agree that Angry Bird can detect anger, and if we agree that the simple type token ratio is a good measure of complexity, and then if you look at where you cut off the values of Bird, you increasingly see that if Bird agrees with you that it's very angry language, then it's also very complex language, as compared to a background of 401 Dutch novels from all sorts of qualities. That's all that I have time for, I think. I also wanted to talk about higher level features that Marijn and colleagues of ours are really still hunting for. We're still just harvesting low hanging fruit, I think, in that sense, but we'll be talking tomorrow about that as well for the workshop, right, Marijn? Okay, good. Because those are the other 100 slides. That's all very interesting, by the way. But the takeaway is that what we can do right now is we have solid results, okay? The results that we get are meaningful. They really tell us something about the literary stuff that we're looking at. But also, we continuously hit this limit of what current NLP methods can deliver to us as literary researchers. We really want to go for more conceptual mining of narratological concepts. And this binds in, we're not the only one, I'm not the only one yelling this, okay? There is a bunch of articles produced in the last few years where cultural people, literary researchers are indeed sort of pointing to the fact that we're still really bad at operationalizing all those lovely literary concepts that we have tons of theory about, but haven't sort of operationalized in ways that we can actually quantify computationally. That's where we really want to go. That's where the challenge is for us. We're still not there. It's a long way to go. So thank you for your attention.
Okay. Any discussion, any provocation, any question? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, super interesting. Also, thank you for being kind of honest about the work. I think that's really useful. I have a question kind of about this too. So, like, why do you think this issue with operationalizing these elements that are, as you pointed out, and I guess the semantic, the context that the machine basically doesn't get, right? Like, why do you think that is the weak point of this situation, so to speak, like language analysis and things like why do you think that is? And is it a technical thing? Again, this isn't my field of expertise, but it was studying it. But like, it seems to me that also as an ex-journalist, I always feel like it's kind of like statistics versus linguistic things, or versus like literary or even non-fiction use. That's kind of curious why you think that weakness exists and whether or not it can actually going to be solved by the more mathematical, statistical machines.
Yeah. Should I repeat it for the people online, or was it?
Please.
Okay. So the question basically is why do we think that context is the information that's missing to solve this problem, and why can't we get to that information, basically, right?
Yeah, more or
Yeah,
less.
okay. So we do know, well, we think we do know, because every time this problem crops up, when we talk to our colleagues and we talk to our literary experts, and we say, well, we clearly we cannot make the computer understand, the algorithm understand what is happening here. So why do you know? And they say, well, I have a background of information of other novels and my personal experience, so that's why I know what's happening here. And of course, that's information that's never in the novel itself. So that's also a hard limit that we hit every time. We really would like to have that context information, but we don't have that data. I'm trying to develop a proposal for a project that tries to kind of create synthetic context data, so that we could try to see how that could be solved, but we're really not there yet. There's one thing I can tell you is that Carina van Dalen, my longtime colleague, has done a survey in 2012, which had 13,000 respondents, and we hoped to get some useful context information from that survey, of course, and we did, but it's still not very content oriented. It's more like quality judgments, and that's helpful, but it's not enough. And that survey was an awful lot of work, so we could never, go that way for getting that information. Also, the demographics were disappointing, because 80% of the respondents were 60 years and over. So it's very skewed, which is still interesting information, but we also want to know what the young people read, of course. So.
Thank you.
But it's all in context, I think.
Yeah. Again, super interesting thing.
Thank you.
I have a very small query. The selection of your data set, basically being focused on officially published novels in real publishers.
Yes.
So the whole cloud of the fan fiction, for instance, or the self-made books, and so whether they have different skews, that would be a very interesting. And also the point that you point out that your readers are basically elderly, rather than youngsters, maybe because of the fact that hard copies are sold to that kind of audiences rather than.
Yes, sir, absolutely. If you're interested in fan fiction, you really need to talk to Julia Nootwaerten, because she's actually.
I'm really interested, not in fan fiction, but in the difference in things
between
the old and the new way of writing things, writing stories.
I mean, the people that create and read fan fiction are definitely using different standards than all the people, professional readers, etc.
Also, the difference between male and female characters starts becoming vague in that kind of.
There's in alternative universes of the literary world, there's places for all places on the spectrum of gender.
There's
like
a subgender of Harry Potter in which Harry Potter is a woman.
Yeah.
And not Harriet Potter, Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry, what's your name? Andreas Pimenti.